Hello, my name is Virginia Congus. I'm a biology student here at Wilmington College, and I get to work at the circulation desk over at Watson Library. This is my second year presenting the OPAL Conference. First year was in person, now we're virtual, so it's going to be a little bit different this time around. One of my other jobs here on campus is to help organize the orientation program for our new students. Running a program like orientation has helped me understand the mind of an incoming freshman, and it's given me plenty of insight onto how that first year goes. And it's really helped me better understand my research on the subject of library anxiety among college students. It's a subject that's near and dear to my heart. I think it's important that librarians are reminded of what library anxiety is, because for us, this is everyday work. We know how to use the catalog, we know how to navigate. But I still think it's a good idea to get a quick refresher on library anxiety before the start of the school year. So we're going to start off just a general description about what library anxiety is. Now, I know it sounds silly that anyone would be afraid of the library, but this phenomenon is similar to most cases of anxiety. Now, I've grown up being in libraries, working in libraries, so I don't exactly experience library anxiety, but as someone who suffers from a general anxiety, I can tell you that I'd experience a similar problem when going into a busy shopping mall or a large grocery store. Library anxiety is the fear of the physical space of the library, as well as the fear of the process of finding library materials. This phenomenon is most common among first year students. However, if library anxiety is not addressed within that first year, it's more likely going to continue throughout the student's college career. So, how would we see library anxiety in action? Picture this, the first month of classes at your college. And I mean this when I say month because often educators think that the transition to college lasts only a couple of weeks. I'm going into my senior year. I've rearranged my life plans about a dozen times since then. Uh, I just figured out how to fold a fitted sheet yesterday. You never fully adjust to college, is what I'm saying. Now, that first month is typically when students will have to attend these library instruction classes that you guys teach. Plenty of times I look across the way over into the computer lab, and there's just rows and rows of freshmen with this blank expression on their face. And we see this a lot during our orientation programs. Students haven't quite yet learned how to, be actively listening, and they're not quite sure if paying attention is the cool thing to do yet. They're a lot more focused on how their peers are acting, how they look, than they are the information that they're supposed to be taking in at that time. Their current mental state also just isn't allowing them to process much information when they're adjusting to this big life change. So from here on, they will not be able to recall that important information, and they're likely going to be too scared to ask for help. So how do we remedy this situation? Now, one thing we can look at is changing up the visual presentation of the library. This image is from inside the Qatar National Library. It's a beautiful building and an architectural marvel to witness. A lot of the bigger libraries are using this modern architecture to create a unique space for library materials. You can see that the building is very spacious, there's plenty of light, the color scheme is simplistic, and it's relaxing. Now, I do understand that our schools definitely don't have the budget to build a library the size of a football field, but there are some aesthetic changes we can make so the library is more visually inviting. Simple things like installing better lighting to brighten up the space can really make a difference. Now, here at Wilmington, we're working with a lot of older buildings that don't exactly mesh well with this modern style that I'm talking about. For example, I'm currently working out of an office that used to be a house here on campus. Recently, we had to take down these super outdated curtains that were in the house. That helped let in a lot of light. We added a fresh coat of paint and minimized the amount of stuff that was hanging on the walls. People are a lot less overwhelmed when they come into the space, and it's a lot easier to focus on my work when I'm not so distracted by everything around me. Another important thing to focus on is engaging students during library instruction. If they aren't comfortable asking questions in a class, they're not going to interact with you one on one. Sometimes it helps to find that one student that will set the tone for the rest of the group. If you're able to grab their attention, the rest are going to follow. Reassure students that they are not alone in the way they're feeling. For part of our orientation, we have a group of current students share some of their struggles, and then they invite the rest of the freshmen to share their stories as well. It's the most impactful part of our program, and it really highlights the value of solidarity among incoming students. Let them know that you understand how daunting the library is and how confusing it can be sometimes. Maybe have the group start off by raising their hands if they've ever felt overwhelmed by being in the library, or ask how often that they've been able to go to the library in the past year because of the pandemic. For some of your schools, that group instruction needs to be restructured completely. In general, when library instruction is done in a group setting, it's found to not be quite effective. I know this has to be done in class sizes, but I mean more in the sense that students don't retain information very well when they feel that they're just being talked at. And I know that sounds a little bit hypocritical considering the format of my own presentation, but I'm hoping you'll forgive me considering the circumstances. But overall, having a more conversational approach, engaging them, is going to be a lot more effective. Being able to create a virtual run through of a catalog that allows students to practice logging into their accounts themselves, performing searches themselves, allows the students to learn this information one-on-one, giving them their own time to figure it out in their space without having that pressure of doing it for the first time completely by themselves. So that way they're able to ask you as soon as it happens, and they're not just watching you do it because they might not exactly be paying attention. So it's important to acknowledge that anxiety doesn't have a set definition, and it doesn't have a set solution either. Ultimately, there is nothing that we can do to eradicate library anxiety completely. If I had an incoming class of students who knew exactly what they were doing, were comfortable with asking questions, and had photographic memories, there would be no need for any of my jobs. The best libraries can do is to address the existence of library anxiety and help make students feel as comfortable as possible. Now, I often hear that there's this internal struggle for librarians, administrators, and professors. They complain that it is so easy to just come up to them and ask for help, and that students so often will continue on their own and not ask anything. And it's important to realize that anxiety has no logic, and it's going to be different for every student. In the end, it is a battle on an individual level. It is not their fault that they feel this way, but it is their responsibility to meet us halfway with helping them. Our responsibility as librarians and student workers is to convince them not to surrender their battle with information literacy. Now, I wish you all a great school year full of learning and making connections. Thank you. Goodbye.